Alright, hey guys, welcome back to another brand new Unreal Engine 4 tutorial. In this video, it's going to be a brief topic video just about dispatcher events and how they work and how you can implement them using UMG to update kind of certain HUD elements that you may want to update. For example, in some projects that I've been working on, I've been using event dispatchers and assigning delegates to update scoreboards for multiplayer. From some of the main programmers, I get an event that returns a player state and a player controller, and I can use that in UMG to get the player state of the score who's updating, check to see if it matches, and update the appropriate score. It's pretty useful. It's kind of hard to imagine what it looks like without actually implementing it, so that's what I'm going to show you today. And we're going to do a simple example to get the ball rolling for you guys. We're going to do a UMG element that just counts how many times you've shot the gun in the game in the first-person shooter example. So that's what we're going to do. So we're in Unreal Engine 4.15, and again I have the first person template available here. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll get started with creating the simple widget that we want. So user interface widget blueprint BP_UI _ shot counter. Double click that. We just need, it's not going to be anything fancy, we just need a text component. Make sure size the content is there, make it a variable, we'll call it number of shots. So that's all we need right now. And then let's go into our player controller, create a widget. Since it's a player controller, we can use self as the owning player. Put in shot counter, and then just add it to viewport. Simple enough, and when we play, we see it in the top left corner, which is exactly what we want. So now we need to actually work with the event dispatcher. So let's go open our first person character, and the shooting logic's here at the bottom. So that's where we want to put it. Let's put it at the end here, and you'll see here underneath where you can place variables, functions, macros, you'll have event dispatchers. And in a general sense, what an event dispatcher does is it basically, whenever the event dispatcher gets called, wherever else there's assignments made in any other blueprint, they will also get called. So in more simple terms, whenever we get this call in this blueprint, wherever we reference in a different blueprint, that will also get called. It's just a way to have simultaneous events take place in different blueprints whenever a certain game action takes place. That's as simple as I can get the definition. So, to create a dispatcher, we can just do event dispatcher. I'll call it weapon fired. And with event dispatchers, you can actually give it input like booleans, integers, player states, player controllers, transforms, structures, objects, anything you want. And depending on what functionality and what you need to perform, that could be really super helpful. But in this case, we just need the executional pen. We don't need any kind of variables or parameters. So what we'll do, we'll grab our weapon fired and drag it into our scene, and then when you do that, you get about 6 different options here. You get call, which is what we're going to use in this case. It basically calls the event dispatcher. Bind basically creates a bind where you can then bind an event to it. You'll see more about that in a bit. Unbind basically does the opposite. It unbinds this dispatcher from an event. Unbind all will unbind all events referenced with this event dispatcher, no matter where they are in blueprints. Event will create the event that you need to go ahead and bind to, and then assign will create and bind to an event automatically for you. Typically what I use is both call, unbind, and assign. I don't use event, unbind all, or bind. I'll explain more in a bit, but for now we just need call. And this is what it's going to look like. So we'll plug it at the end here. And that's all we really need to do in our character. So we can actually go back into our shot counter. And you always want to do this from the event construct. And this is what you need to do. You need to assign that dispatcher delegate here. So we need to get a reference to our owning player pawn. I always like to check if it's valid or not, just to avoid any kind of problems. And what we can do is cast it to your player character. In this case, it's a first person character. And a really cool trick, if you know it's always going to be the same object, there's no chances of it being a different object that you're referencing in any kind of case, You can always right click and do convert to pure cast. That's pretty useful because it saves you an executional pin, it saves you an instruction here, because if you know it's always going to be first person character, what's the point of checking if it's failed or not? But if you still have that concern, you can always pull from success and do a branch, and if it's successful, it'll go forward. If it's not, it'll go false. So as the first person character, what we can do now, if we type in assign, you'll see a bunch of different options. So you can assign on begin overlap, you can assign on taking damage, if the character's clicked, if the character movement's updated. You can actually assign a lot of cool things. But what we want is assign weapon fired. So let's click that, and as you can see here, we have the bind, and we also have the event. It connects it automatically for us, which is really nice. So we'll plug in the event. We'll plug in the binding here. We'll give our custom event here a name. We'll call it weapon fired. And just to make sure that it's working, let's just do a quick print. So every time I fire, we should see hello come up on the screen. And we do, which is perfect. So now let's do something a little more interesting. Let's first create a function. We'll call this count number of shots. And we also need a variable. It's going to be a public variable, and we're going to call it shots. And we'll make it an integer. And then what we can do is increment in here. Actually, no, we don't want to increment in here, I'm sorry. We just want to grab our number of shots, do a set text, and plug it in. And with text, it's pretty cool what you can do. When you pull from it, you can type in format, and you'll get a format text function. And what you can do here is put in text, but you can also put in arguments, so you can put in extra parameters. So I want my text to read number of shots, colon, space, and then the number of shots. So to write that, we'll do number of shots, colon, space, and then open and close curly braces. And then it's typically nice to name these arguments just so you know what you're doing and you can read it. So we'll call this shots. And it gives you a wildcard argument. And all we need to do is put in our integer into that wildcard. And that's our function. And we'll want to call this function in two places. One at the very beginning, because if we don't, it'll just read text block, but when we have it placed there, it'll say number of shots 0. And then, before we call it in weapon fired, that's where we want to increment our shots variable. And then follow it with the function. So now, every time we fire, we'll see that number go up. And it's working, perfect. So I would stop it here, but I kind of want to show you guys how to make or how to unbind events as well. So let's make a custom event. We'll call it unbind weapon fired, and we'll call that when shots equals 5. Sorry, 5. And when that's true, we'll call that custom event we just made, unbind weapon fired. So from unbind weapon fired, we want to copy this part. We want to check if the character is valid, and we got to cast to first person character. And what we can do is unbind, and then weapon fired. And you'll see unbind all events, and you'll see unbind event. I always use just unbind event. Depending on the complexity of your systems, you may not want to unbind all events. So that's something just to be wary of. So all we have to do now is plug in our delegate back into this event. And what should we expect to happen? We shoot 5 times. After the 5th one, it'll stop counting. And it's working, which is great. So that's where I'm going to end this tutorial, guys. Make sure you leave a comment if you have any questions, concerns. I'll try my best to answer them. I'm not very good at answering questions, post a video. But But also leave a comment on what else you would like to learn, if there's any topics you want me to discuss. Make sure to like the video as well if you enjoyed the content, and also make sure to subscribe for more Unreal Engine 4 blueprint examples, tutorials, videos, vlogs, everything. I appreciate everybody's support. Until the next video, guys, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you later.